The package falls from the sky. It cuts through the cold night air, spinning slowly, its small blinking light barely visible against the darkness. Below, high concrete walls stretch like a fortress. Steel fences hum with electricity. Cameras turn, scanning every inch. Guards patrol with flashlights, boots echoing on hard ground. And yet, the package lands perfectly. Inside one of the most secure prisons in the United States. No alarm sound. No one stops it. Within minutes, a shadow moves across the yard. A hand reaches out. The package disappears. By morning, drugs are already being sold inside the prison. And no one on the outside has any idea. How is this possible? How can something so tightly controlled fail so completely? To understand this, we must go back. Back before the drones. Before the viral videos. Before the headlines. Back to a time when prisons were already fighting a battle they could not win. For decades, high-security prisons in the United States and the United Kingdom were designed to be impossible to break into and impossible to escape from. Places like ADX Florence in Colorado, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, and HM Prison Manchester in England, once called Strangeways, were built with one goal in mind: total control. Every movement monitored. Every door locked. Every person searched. But even in the 1980s and 1990s, something strange kept happening. Drugs were still getting inside. At first, officials believed the problem came from visitors. Family members. Friends. Lawyers. People would come in, hug an inmate, and somehow pass something small and hidden, wrapped carefully, sometimes swallowed and later retrieved. So prisons tightened rules. Glass barriers replaced physical contact. Search procedures became stricter. Dogs were brought in. Body scanners were introduced. And still, drugs kept appearing. It didn't make sense. In places like Rikers Island in New York, reports began to show something alarming. Despite constant searches and heavy security, drugs like heroin and cocaine were being found regularly inside cells. In the United Kingdom, similar reports came from prisons like HM Prison Birmingham. It was like trying to stop water with your hands. Every time one method was blocked, another appeared. At first, it was small. A hidden packet in clothing. A tiny wrap passed during a handshake. But then, something changed. The methods became smarter. More organized. More dangerous. Inside the prison, inmates began forming networks. These were not random actions anymore. This was planning. One inmate would have a contact outside. Another would control distribution inside. Someone else would handle payments, often using coded phone calls or messages. And slowly, a system was built. A system that worked better than the prison's own controls. By the early 2000s, investigators began uncovering something even more shocking. The problem was not just coming from outside. It was coming from inside the system itself. In 2009, a major investigation in the United Kingdom revealed that prison officers had been caught smuggling drugs into facilities. Not one. Not two. But many. Some were pressured. Some were bribed. Some were deeply involved. Inmates would offer money, sometimes thousands of pounds, for a single delivery. And for some guards, the temptation was too strong. A phone call. A small package. A quick handoff. And just like that, security was broken. In the United States, similar cases began to surface. At Rikers Island, corrections officers were arrested for bringing in drugs, phones, and even weapons. At state prisons in California, investigations found organized smuggling rings involving staff members. This was no longer just a security problem. It was a system problem. Because when the people responsible for enforcing the rules become part of the problem, the system begins to collapse from within. But even this was not the end. Because while authorities focused on corrupt staff and visitor smuggling, something new was already being tested. Something that would change everything. It began quietly. In rural prisons. Wide open spaces. Less crowded airspace. Someone had an idea. What if you didn't need a person at all? What if the package could fly? At first, it sounded impossible. Prisons had walls, fences, cameras, and guards. But they didn't control the sky. The first known drone-related smuggling incidents began appearing in the early 2010s. Small devices. Hard to detect. Flying at night. Carrying small but valuable cargo. Drugs. Phones. SIM cards. In 2015, a major case in Ohio shocked officials. A drone dropped a package into the yard of Mansfield Correctional Institution. Inside the package, heroin, marijuana, and tobacco. A fight broke out among inmates trying to grab it. Chaos erupted. And for the first time, the public saw what prison officials had feared. The sky was now an entry point. In the UK, the problem grew quickly. Drones were used to drop packages over walls into prisons like HMP Wandsworth and HMP Bedford. Some drones were equipped with cameras. Operators could see exactly where to drop the package. It was precise, efficient, and extremely hard to stop. Prisons were never designed to defend against flying machines. By the time guards noticed, it was already too late. Inside, inmates adapted quickly. They created signals. Markers in the yard. Specific times. Drop zones. What started as random attempts became a system. A reliable system. And just like before, every time authorities tried to block one method, another evolved. But there was something even deeper happening. Something more dangerous than drones or corrupt guards. Because all of this was being driven by one simple truth. There was demand. Inside prison, drugs were not just a luxury. They were power. They were currency. They were control. An inmate with access to drugs could build influence. Control others. Create debt. Build networks. And in some cases, run entire operations from behind bars. Which meant one thing. No matter how strong the walls became. No matter how many cameras were added. No matter how strict the rules were. There would always be someone trying to get drugs inside. And someone willing to help them. But just as authorities began focusing on drones and corruption, a new layer of the system was already forming. Smarter. Hidden. Almost invisible. A method that didn't rely on walls, or skies, or even people walking through gates. And when investigators finally discovered it, they realized something terrifying. The system wasn't just failing. It was being outplayed. And they were already too late to stop it.